On this episode of Bytes and Banter, we take a look behind the curtain to see how is Bytes and Banter come together. Who are the people that make it happen? We have Terry, Colleen, Daniel. Oh my! Let's get into it. On this episode of Bytes and Banter, we're actually taking a look behind the scenes, the making of Bytes and Banter, if you will. We have some special guests with us today who make this show happen. And we're going to have them introduce themselves. We're going to talk a little bit about some insights they've got and some things they do with Bytes and Banter to bring the content to you, the listener. We're going to start with Terry. Terry or Peza? Is that how you pronounce your last name, Terry? Did I say that right?
Almost. Oropeza.
Oh, Oropeza. I got it. Terry, walk me through a little bit about your background with Bytes and Banter. What do you do for the show? And tell our audience kind of how you are the glue that keeps us all functioning.
Thanks, Rocky. So yes, Terry Oropeza. I am been part of the Bytes and Banter podcast since inception, because I was part of the live stream program that we had before, where we would do a 15-minute live interview every week. But we felt like we wanted to do expand more. Some of our guests are so interesting that we wanted to give them a chance to share more. And also take away the live part, because that makes it a little easier on us on the production team. I've been involved with HDI since like 2001, when I first became a help desk manager by virtue of a major reorg in my company that I worked for at the time. And it has been amazing for me in my career path. And in the last 8 years since I officially retired, and now I teach at college for college students going towards a future in IT, it continues to be, it's a lot of fun. It's fun to hear people's stories. I love that part.
Thanks, Terry. You are known for giving back to this community, one of our top 25 thought leaders at HDI this year. And so we're so appreciative of you and all the work you do to make this show happen. Let's jump over to Colleen. Colleen, introduce yourself. Tell our audience what you do, how you kind of help put all these pieces together logistically.
So I'm Colleen Rush. My current role is Director of Application Support at Bayada Home Healthcare. I've been there for 26 years. So I started in the service side of the business and then moved my way into IT and was able to, similar to Terry, have help desk roles, and then now more focused on end user application support. In conjunction with that, many years ago, I think around 2012, I was introduced to HDI Local Chapters by a few of my colleagues who have been involved with HDI for a very long time. So I have been a member, I've gone to a lot of conferences, and then became an active member on the board of the HDI Philly chapter. So I've been doing that for several years, lost track of exactly how many years with those few years we had of COVID, but probably about 5 years or so. I've been involved with the Philly board and also more recently as a district president as well. So I'm responsible for Philly, but also working with some of the other chapters to help them, get their things, chapter meetings scheduled and events planned and things like that. So then, being on those meetings, I was made aware of this opportunity, being sort of a showrunner / associate producer of Bytes and Banter. I guess it was a few episodes in that you all had already kind of gotten through before I joined. So it's been over a year now, I think. And as Terry said, it's just been great getting to know everyone. Quite a few of the presenters have been people that I have interacted before through the HDI local Philly chapters. Many of them have been new, and they all have great lessons to share with us.
Yeah, Colleen, I think you undersell the value you've brought in since you've joined and just the organization, and how you are able to just organize the flow of engaging our guests, scheduling our guests. All of that really makes a huge difference. So thank you. Personally, for all of our audience, I say thank you. All right, Colleen, similar to you, our next guest is Daniel. And Daniel actually came on as well a little after we started. But Daniel, you've been, I would say, my brain trust buddy. Just we brainstorm a lot. We talk a lot in our production meetings. And it's been a lot of fun having you on this team. And so talk a little bit about what you do, what your day job is, and how you're involved in Bytes and Banter.
Thank you, Rocky. Daniel Gento. I am a senior manager service desk at CIBC. I've been in IT for over 15 years. I worked formerly at a managed service provider in IT space. And ultimately, I loved getting involved with the podcast for HDI. I've been a member of HDI since about the same time as Colleen, around 2012, 2013. Started to get some of the HDI certifications, like the team lead, as well as looking at some of the manager ones. And then ultimately in this last couple years, started to look into becoming one of the board members, and I'm currently the HDI Chicagoland president, and we're excited about bringing Chicagoland back, as took a little hiatus during the COVID years. And as Rocky was mentioning, we do a lot of brainstorming when we start to talk to our guests, because we want to hear their story. We want to be able to pull out some of the amazing things that they've experienced to provide that to our listeners. And that is some of the most powerful things that we're experiencing when we're in these production recording sessions. And there's a couple other things that we do. We actually mark a couple different areas within those clips, so then we can call those out and share that on LinkedIn, as well as some of our other social media platforms. We also write articles as people learn several different ways, by watching, by listening, and then also by reading.
Yeah, Daniel, you've done a lot of good work just writing those articles, that we release on LinkedIn, just sharing some really good insights, right, from the episodes for the audience to kind of give them that high level. So walk me through your time with Bytes and Banter. What are some things you've learned from our guests, some things that are really have stuck with you, takeaways, et cetera? Walk me through something, that you've personally taken away from just this whole process even.
Yeah, during the process, I think my biggest takeaway is listening even more to those that have kind of walked ahead of me. Hearing their stories are actually highlighting some areas that I can kind of do better in, and then hear some of the steps that they took and apply them in my career, as well as apply in my work or even my personal life with my family and my kids. That has been the biggest takeaway from just meeting all the different speakers that we have, and just hearing their history.
Yeah, I love that, Daniel. I love just the reality that our guests have done a lot of things, right, in our industry, and there's so many takeaways for us. And I'm glad that you highlighted that, even personal life, right, and family. And it's so much more than just IT, right? It's how do we lead? How do we communicate? How do we, ask someone to mentor us? How do we step into a role of the unknown, right? And so I love that you highlighted that. Colleen, as we were talking a little bit about kind of you starting as really, you're a board member, you're involved in HDI, but you started as an audience member, right? And you started as somebody who was watching, and then you got involved. What are some of the things that you've noticed, some things that you've seen with the episodes and the guests that we've had on, and what are some takeaways that you've had?
So Daniel touched on it when he mentioned the personal lives that everyone ends up sharing. As I mentioned, some of these speakers I've seen speak at conference, I've seen them do keynotes, and, you look up to these people and you think that don't make mistakes. They're not afraid. They don't feel like, subjected to imposter syndrome at times. And every single person has shown that vulnerability, whether they've talked about their early life and, maybe they got into some trouble in high school before they figured out, their IT path, or, they ended up in, military service, and where that, some of that training and stuff like just really kind of gets in your head a little bit. They've all shared those vulnerabilities, I think, to show us that they're human. And, the things that we might really give ourselves a hard time about and be our own worst enemy when we make a mistake or go through something that just didn't succeed, they're proving to us that it doesn't matter. Like in that moment in time, it does, but overall it doesn't. And when you get past that and learn from it, that's such a huge lesson to learn. Another, theme that I've noticed is there's a lot of dream big, do it afraid, take the risk anyway. What are the, sometimes it's more, what is the downfall of not taking the risk than it is the fear that we have of taking the risk. And then lastly, a lot of themes around mentors and finding mentors. And I think all of those things, doing it afraid, dreaming big, so much easier to do probably when you do have mentors that have been through some of those things and can share those experiences with you. I think me being, someone that's been in a job for a very long time, sometimes you forget the importance of a mentor because maybe you're not looking for your next job or your next position. So you just think that, you're plugging along, you're doing a good job, and you're not thinking, value that someone else could bring to you as far as maybe pushing you to do those things that you're afraid to do, or just being that listening ear when you're going through some of those struggles.
Yes, absolutely on point. I think mentorship is a common theme, leadership is a common theme, taking the step regardless of the fear that you might have, right? And imposter syndrome. How many people are listening that didn't realize that Kirk Weisler, right, who's a very well-known HDI, conference MC, faced some of these things. And so I think it's such a good point to call out that all the people we talk to are humans who have stories with really cool moments of overcoming and stepping into new challenges. And Terry, you've been involved with HDA for so long, and you've met most, if not all, of our guests before they ever showed up to our recording, to the prep. And so, what are the things that some things you've learned, some things that you've taken away from our guests throughout this process?
That is a really good point because, yes, I'm always listening with the idea of sharing things. Speaking of mentoring, always thinking of sharing things with my students and with people that are just starting in their career. And that idea, and I think back to when I was just starting in my career, and I thought that my CIO was just, invincible until she shared with me one time about how she would sometimes cry on her way home from work. And that made such a big difference to me because I would cry on my way home from work sometimes. It's frustrating. IT is a hard job. So sharing those things, sharing those stories, as a person who's been involved in this field for a very long time, it's fun to share their stories. That's why I stay active in HDI. I've spent literally a lifetime acquiring all these skills, and I love to give back and share them. And speaking of mentoring, we are starting a mentoring program with HDI Local Chapters as well. One thing we've also been able to do, we talked about for a second about Robert Half, who's one of our sponsors. We have multiple sponsors, and we are an all-volunteer nonprofit. So giving our not only our practitioners, but our sponsors an opportunity to share their stories also has been a really fulfilling part of both the live stream and now the Bytes and Banter podcast for what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think can't talk enough about how valuable it is and how thankful we are to have those sponsors, right? To give them a place to not only come and share some insights, what's happening in the market, happening in our field, but also to get to pick their brain, right? About some of these resources and bring these resources to our audience, things like the demand for skill talent, which we're going to be talking about very soon, and the different trends in unemployment and the jobs that that are growing in tech, and some of the salary guide, for example, right? Like, what are people making and how is that changing? It's just an immense value to our audience, and we can't, thank them enough. And so if you are someone who's one of the sponsors listening, unapologetically, I will say thank you, Robert Half. Thank you to our national sponsor, HDI. We love you. We love what you do for, like Terry said, this nonprofit of volunteers that are just trying to give back to this community. So Terry, I'm going to ask you one final question. And then we'll ask the rest of our guests the same question. If you could say, for all of our listeners or watchers, depending on what platform they're consuming, something you want them to take away when they watch Bytes and Banter, what would that be?
I think I would like them to walk away seeing that IT is a very broad topic, and there's a lot of different kinds of people that are involved in all variety of jobs. This is something I tell my students all the time. They come to take our programs. They think I know I like computers, but they really have no idea how the breadth of the types of jobs that are here and the people. Like Kirk is a great example. He was an individual contributor the first conference that I went to in 2001. And he, along with a number of people who are now regarded as spokespeople in our industry were individual contributors then, and they moved along into other roles, and then they moved along into different paths, and then they end up coming back because we are a fun group and we do a lot to help each other. So that's what I hope people would take away, is that there's a lot of variety here and a lot of opportunity to be involved in a professional association. This is a topic I speak about within the college system a lot.
I love it. Come learn, come grow, be a part of something bigger in this IT world, not just service desks. So I love that, Terry. What about you, Colleen? What are something you would have our audience take away from your perspective?
So I think two things I would like them to take. The first one would be how passionate this organization is. I haven't been involved in a lot of volunteer organizations, but I struggle to think that some others get as much passion as this one does. It's such a tight knit group of people involved in different committees, looking forward to the conferences and different opportunities to speak. But that, falls into everything else we do. So that makes us take this more seriously because of how passionate we are about the organization and what it has to offer. The other thing I would say, too, is I think this is a really good group that is part of the production team. We're always looking for help, as you all know. But those of us involved, I think we're in similar roles where we interact with a lot of people in the industry, between future IT professionals, staffing agencies, college graduates new to their careers, and we have a far reach by being part of this. So, obviously anyone can share from a LinkedIn post or any kind of, social media post, but we all get to see this twice. Obviously we're sitting through it as we watch it happen the first time, as Rocky does it. And then we're either editing or, reviewing for edits, or reviewing it to write articles or pulling out snippets. So I think that whole teaching method, that the fact that we get to hear it or see it twice, helps it be a stronger message for us to share with our communities.
No, absolutely, Colleen. I think you're on point. The HDI community is so passionate, right? It's just a bunch of people who are so passionate about giving back to those who have been where they're at, who are in this industry, and we're all working with the same goal, right? Which is better experiences for our customer, whether you're internal customer, external customer, and viewing that through technology and through community and brainstorming and figuring out, hey, how do I improve my ITSM platform? How do I improve how we provide support to our end users and our community? And I love that note of just passion. It's so true. Now, Daniel, you're last but not least, I'm going to ask you the same question. What is something you hope that the Bytes and Banter audience takes away whenever they watch an episode?
From an audience standpoint, I would love for them to take away at least one thing off of each episode, each podcast, because if they do that, their skills, their growth, their knowledge will just grow endlessly if you just can take one piece of advice, one piece of failures or stories where there was a challenge, there was a hurdle, and they did X, Y, or Z to get around it. One thing that will help you in the long run as you add those all up.
Daniel, that is such a simple but deep and meaningful answer. What do you want people to take away? One thing. Doesn't matter what that is. One thing you can take back and apply. It can have a meaningful impact. And if you do that every time we drop an episode, that's like 26 things a year, probably. It's 26 improvements on who you are as a leader, as a colleague, as a mentor or mentee. I think that has so much meaning. For me, Daniel and Terry and Colleen, there's two things I would say for our audience. Number one, being a part of HDI is bigger than simply putting your name on a membership and saying I go to conferences twice a year and I might go to a meeting. It's this conversation. It's being a part of a community that is giving back, right, in a tangible way. And number two, everybody has a story. Everybody has a story, and as you listen to the episodes, as you watch our guests be vulnerable, which is a word that was used, and share their hurdles, share their journeys, as you even listen to our sponsors come on and talk about the different people they've helped find jobs and navigating that landscape, my hope is that you realize that your story is worth telling. Your story is worth telling, whether that is, hey, reach out to somebody on the board at HDI, one of us. We'd love to talk to you about being on an episode. But even the people around you, be known, be willing to be known, and be willing to ask people questions about who they are. And the sky's the limit. The growth is, it never stops. The more you're willing to find one thing and be passionate and really take home the things that you're learning from the resources like Bytes and Banter. So that being said, this has been a sneak peek behind the scenes. I want to thank our sponsors, Robert Half, our national sponsors at HDI Local Chapters, and specifically I want to thank Podtext, who helps us put this all together. I want to thank Terry, Colleen, Daniel. You guys are such a pleasure to work with, and I am thankful that I get to talk to you guys usually once a week and learn from you and learn from our guests together. So that being said, we'll catch you on the next episode of Bytes and Banter.